Have you heard the phrase, all politics are local? Today, Your Votes Counts program's purpose is to help our viewers see how true that is. This program was prepared by the nonpartisan political organization League of Women Voters of Marion and Polk Counties and produced by Capital Community Media. In odd election years, voters vote on special election slate of candidates for special service districts. We typically think of these as school board elections, but there's much more going on. These positions are nonpartisan, and the list of positions varies between municipalities. These are important to the regular functioning of our communities, but often go unseen. I'm Bernadine Anderson, your moderator from the League of Women Voters. Our guest today will help us learn about special service districts and how to get involved locally. Today, our first guest is Frank Stratton, Executive Director of Association of Oregon. Frank Stratton has been involved with this Special Districts Association of Oregon as either an employee or a consultant for the past 32 years. As the current executive director, he's responsible for overseeing all operations, including governmental affairs, legal services, risk management, underwriting claims, and information technology. Could you please tell us today what is a special service district and why are they so important to us?
Absolutely. Thank you, Deanie. Thank you for having me here today to talk about special districts. There are approximately 1,000 special districts in the state of Oregon. I like to think of them as just about every type of local government that's not a city, county, or school-related entity like a school district, community college, education service district, so kind of everything else. There's 36 types of special districts in the state, ranging from fire districts, water districts, irrigation, cemetery districts, ports, on and on. So just about anything that someone might be interested in, there's a special district out there for them to get involved in. Also in special districts, most all of them have elected boards. So there's approximately 6,000 elected board members out there for these special districts. And a lot of times people don't even know that those opportunities are out there to serve. But as I said, there's so many different types and ways that you can become involved. Because special districts are kind of the most volunteer type of district you could probably serve in. We estimate there's around 10,000 special district volunteers. A lot of those are volunteer firefighters, volunteer paramedics and EMTs, but also volunteers at park and recreation districts, even volunteers at irrigation districts that might help clear out the irrigation ditches. And of those districts, 400 of the 1,000 operate on less than $100,000 budget. So, you know, for people especially that are really interested in volunteering their time and being part of an organization that really has to watch the money that it spends and operate in an efficient manner, special districts are a great opportunity for that. We like to think of them as being, you know, closest to the people, or what democracy is really about, because they're created by the local people and in local communities for a specific purpose of what they need. And I wanted to talk a few minutes about that, because often people still wonder, well, I still don't understand these. Why do they exist? Why are they not a city? Why are they not a county? Well, the main reason special districts get formed is that in Oregon, as in many of the western states especially, if you live outside of a city, you don't have access to those types of services that I talked about. Counties don't provide those services like water and fire and irrigation, cemeteries, et cetera. They don't do that. So what happens if you live outside of a city is you traditionally form a special district by getting together with your neighbors, filing a petition, sending it to the ballot, deciding how much you're going to tax yourselves on, and you create the district. Good example of that is Curry County, one of our rural counties in southern Oregon. It only has 3 cities in the entire county, and those cities are pretty small. So everyone else who lives outside the city, they get their hospitals, health services from a special district, they get their fire and EMS from fire districts, they are employed by the ports. The library districts are special districts that provide regional library services. Just about every other type of service is a special district, not a city and county. And so people think, wow, it's really difficult to get involved in government. But if you think about how broad it is and what you can be involved in, there's a lot of great opportunities out there. Another reason that special districts get formed is to provide regional solutions. So there's some very large districts in the state that are formed to take advantage of economies of scale. So for instance, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue is probably one of the biggest fire districts west of the Rockies. And it used to be 13 cities up in the metropolitan area of Portland all had their own fire departments. They had their own trucks. They had their own chiefs. Their trucks were all painted different colors. And they thought in that region, why are we doing this? Why don't we just have one very large fire district that does fire and EMS really well and take over the service for all the cities? And that way it becomes, not only do the taxpayers end up getting better service all around, but it also saves everyone money. Districts also get formed to solve a specific purpose, and we have a new type of district that's really interesting and really illustrates it. It's called a sand control district. So if you have people on the coast outside of Walport that live in a neighborhood that gets completely buried in sand once in a while. And the county can't deal with it because the county is strapped with funds for its sheriff's department, jails, etc. They live outside the city boundaries, so the city's not going to help. So what do? Well, to get rid of the sand, in the past, everyone is asked to contribute. Well, what happens when everyone's asked to contribute? Not everybody contributes. We all know that. Maybe 10% of people contribute, and the others rely on their neighbors to pay for it. So by forming a district, they actually they get together, they vote to tax themselves so that everybody gets taxed on their property taxes an equal amount based on their value, and that way everyone has to pay. And everyone has to pay, it becomes equal. So another reason special districts get formed is so that it's fair for everyone and everyone gets to pay their fair share. So I live in Silverton. In Silverton, our fire is provided by a fire district, just like in Kaiser. Betty's going to talk about that. They have a fire district. We have a library district, and we're working on a park district. Now, before, the city has a small boundary, but with having its own fire department, the fire department would have to go respond way outside of its boundaries, and those people wouldn't have to pay for that. The library had a city library, but everybody outside the city boundary would come in and use the library and not have to pay for it. Same with the parks. As beautiful parks, everybody comes from outside the city to use the parks, but they don't have to pay for it. If you form a park district that has, or these districts that have much larger boundaries in the areas for people where people actually use these services, then it becomes easier to fund because more people are paying in, but everybody's also paying their fair share. So hopefully those examples give some illustrations of why these exist, because that's the biggest misconception is people think, why would I want to serve on something that I don't understand? Right. And as you mentioned, I think one of the most important things is these are nonpartisan organizations. Traditionally, people that want to run for a district board are running because they want to serve their communities, they want to help their communities, they want to be involved, they want to give back. They're not interested in building their political career. And we do have a few now that are struggling, like library districts kind of get caught up in the politics of the day a little bit, but for the most part, it's people that generally just want to serve and they want to give back.
Thank you. It's important for us to understand the lay of the land, if you will, and to look at how many volunteers are already engaged and encourage our population to take a step up and get involved. With that in mind, we want to hear from two people today that are involved and have been involved and can share what does that look like and what does that mean to them. Our next guest is Betty Hart, currently serving on the Kaiser Fire District as board director and as treasurer. She has a real history of volunteerism that includes the Kaiser Community Library, Rotary, JCs, and Girl Scouts. But today, we would like to hear about your experience serving on the Special District Board, what it's meant to you, and what does that look like?
So, yes, I've been on the board for almost 8 years now, and for the most part, we have one meeting a month. We have budget meetings once a year, once or twice a year, depending on what's going on. But there are lots of other ways to be involved, and I want to make a comment about what Frank said about special districts. When people ask me what it is, I say, so it's that item on your ballot that you go, what is that? Why am I voting for a sewer district person or whatever the district is? So a lot of people miss out or don't even think about them until they see that and then don't realize what it is. I really became involved, though, with the Kaiser Fire District. My husband was serving on the board of directors, and they had to go out for a levy in 2013. And I had had experience in working on political campaigns, and so I volunteered to help with the political campaign to pass the operating levy. And it's important for our agency to be able to provide service to our community that we have an operating levy, and they have to be renewed every 5 years. And so I worked on that, and then after my husband left the board, I decided I would run. And I have really enjoyed doing that. I have a background in nonprofit finance and accounting, so I became the board treasurer and make a report with the help quite a bit, obviously, of our office manager around what's happening with the finances of our agency. And I've done quite a few other things in addition to that original levy that I worked on. We've had 2 other operating levies since then, and we passed a bond measure to replace our fire equipment, most of which were 20 years or older. So that was pretty important to us, and it came at a great time. We were able to maximize the value of that bond measure to really upgrade our fleet and actually replace more equipment than we thought we would be able to. So it's also nice to know really what's going on. And while I have no idea about any of the day-to-day calls, really, what I do know that, what sort of the big picture of all of that is and how much the demand for service has grown, particularly in the area of medical services as our population has aged, and particularly with respect to more retirement homes in our community. So, and how we maintain a presence with our community who don't need our service. So what's important, for instance, for us to do, because we rely on all of the voters to support us, is we do a pancake breakfast a couple times a year, and we have an open house in the fall. We're celebrating our 75th anniversary next month. So we've been around a lot longer, for instance, than the city of Kaiser, which will be celebrating its 40th birthday in June. So it's been a lot of fun, and crazy or not, I've decided I'm going to serve another term. So,
and I'm sure the whole community is glad of that, Betty. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next guest also is going to share with us some information about his particular service related to a different special service district. This is John Barber, a 36-year career fire officer and now an active volunteer firefighter in Dallas. Other volunteer service has been with Rotary Club and James II Community Kitchen. John is just finishing the 3rd 4-year term on the board of directors for the Dallas Cemetery District number 4. We ask you as well, John, to share about your experience serving on a special service district, what that's meant to you, and what does that look like?
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate being here today. I got involved, prior to being involved in the cemetery district, my career as a fire officer put me in a position to be interfacing with fire districts, so I had a lot of knowledge about how they worked. I was always amazed at how citizens as a whole have no idea where their services are coming from, even something as basic as fire service. They don't know until they dial 911 and somebody shows up. They're usually quite often ignorant of what's out there to serve them. At any rate, so one of my fellow firefighters, Jack Connon, was on the board of directors for the cemetery district, which I didn't even know existed at that time. And he said to me, John, he says, I'm moving out of the district. I'm no longer eligible to run. Would you run in the next election cycle? I said, sure, I'm always up to serving, doing something for the public good. And so I ran, and now I'm on there for the third rotation. And it's been very interesting. I'm interested in history in general, so that's nice because Dallas Cemetery District has been around since the late 1840s, and the first burial there was 1848. And that district was formed when the Oddfellows who owned it originally were no longer able or willing to continue managing it, and so the citizens got together and formed a district. And so we have a very nice district with a 5-person board of directors, a general manager, a sexton, and a maintenance person. And we provide what we think is a pretty important service. There's lots of private cemeteries too people have access to, obviously, but we like to think of ours as kind of family-oriented and a nice place for people to come and visit their relatives and ancestors. And also a lot of dog walkers. We get a lot of people just recreational walking, and because it's very peaceful and well-kept grounds. And so it's been very interesting and a very interesting experience, and a fairly important service to the public.
Could you tell us a little more about what kinds of decisions does the board have to make regarding cemeteries?
Well, we have a two-year cycle on our budget, and much like the state of Oregon does. And so we have a budget committee, and we pass a budget. About 24% of our budget comes from tax base. The balance of it comes from sale of services, burials, and things that go with that. And we're, like Frank mentioned, we're always right in the ragged edge of there's nothing left over at the end of a 2-year cycle usually. We do have a substantial reserve, which is important for continued maintenance over the years. But as far as daily operations, yeah, we use every penny we have access to, and so our budgeting, the board of directors is responsible for setting a budget and make sure we follow it, and also setting policies. We recently, about a year ago now, had SDAO come in and give us a review, management review, and make several suggestions about standard operating procedures and things of that nature. And so we're working on implementing those recommendations. And of course, the other aspect of their special services, the insurance side, that's our insurance carrier. And so that's an important aspect for us, is both the consultants they provide for us, as well as the insurance side of their operation. And probably many boards of directors don't get involved in day-to-day stuff, but most of us have some interest in, maybe we have family members there. And right now I'm involved in building and installing an information kiosk. One of our other members is very active in the Pioneer Cemetery, making sure those graves, unmarked graves, are get marked, and so on and so forth, and honoring the people that are deceased to clear back to Civil War times, veterans. And so several of us have personal interest in that, and also we have little projects that we get involved in, as well as the staff, directing the staff. So
Thank you for elaborating on
Yeah.
that. We're going to explore just some questions and have a general conversation. Anyone can answer when you have a piece of information to share.
Okay.
And we want to make sure the public understands, what does it take to get involved? Frank mentioned some things about that. What kind of time investment, and how does it help elaborate on your own personal interests, just as John has illustrated with his interest in history. So, and the other item that you've also mentioned in various ways is about funding. So I think it would be interesting to know a little more about how they are funded. But first, let's take the question about, what would you tell a person as to a time commitment or skills that are needed to be on some assorted special district board?
Well, I'd be happy to speak to that. It's good that you have a board with a variety of backgrounds and skills. Mine happens to be in accounting and finance, but other board members bring, business experience, or working with large agencies, or other kinds of things that are important to the organization. And in many small districts, like John was talking about, the board members end up doing a lot of volunteer work because they don't have much in the way of staff. Now, our job at the Kaiser Fire District and in a larger district is to hire the fire chief, for instance, and then the chief is in charge of the day-to-day operations. And our role is whatever is needed to supplement either on the board or to assist the chief in accomplishing the goals that he has. So, for instance, we're having a pancake breakfast coming up on Mother's Day, and I will be helping out at the table where we take the payments for the people who are coming to have the pancakes, and greeting people as they come in. It's one of my favorite jobs to do. And I also represent the board in some community activities. So our mayor, Kathy Clark, mayor of the city, has a monthly thing called Coffee with Kathy. And since the pandemic started, we've been doing that virtually, and it plays on Facebook and on the Kaiser's TV station and stuff. So I represent the fire district on that and report to the community what kinds of things are coming up on our agenda that might be of interest to them, and also then catch what else people are, the other people who are there are reporting on to share with the board at our next meeting. I also attend another meeting in the community and represent the fire board with a lot of networking. So that's the thing that particularly in that board members can do is represent the district because we're elected by the people. I think it's important for me to be where people can see me and talk with me if they have something they want to say that would be important to the Kaiser Fire District. So that's how I see myself in helping with the board.
Thank you. Related to that, both of you became involved on the board because you were in you had a contact, an individual encouraged you to go that direction, you had some contact. What would a person do and how would they reach out to be interested in serving on a special service district board if they did not have those connections? Where would they turn? How would they see what's available?
Well, we always, as required by law, we advertise when our meetings are going to take place, and we encourage people to come. We seldom get anybody to come to them unless they have an issue. But that'd be the first step a person could take to see if there's anything they'd be interested in, would be to attend a monthly board of directors meeting.
And how do they find out about that?
It's in our case, it's in our weekly newspaper called the Itemizer Observer. It's actually published in there in our coming meetings. So, yeah.
Yeah, public meeting notices are required by law, so those have to be available and published, whether on their website or posted in a newspaper, et cetera, for the public to see. So that's a great spot. And just from the most basic element, I guess, is to look at your property tax statement.
Oh.
Right? That's going to say the taxing entities are there. Not all fire district has a tax. Do you have a tax base?
Yes.
They have a tax. Cemetery districts have a tax base. So not all types of districts have property tax authority, but so another place to look would be your bills you pay every month. So you might live in a water district. In that case, they don't have property taxes, but that's who you might be paying your water bill to. Or your sanitary district, you might be paying your sewer bill. Or your electricity might come from a people's utility district. So those are probably the most basic ways you could, in general, see where they are. And then you could get on their website and find out when their meetings are. Go to the meeting and watch, get involved that way, and decide if that's something you're interested in doing.
That's wonderful, and that makes the bill statement we get even more fun to get, doesn't it? Since we're talking about funding, we've heard mention a couple of things. One was about an operating levy, and you spoke somewhat to that the establishment of a district equalizes the payment among all people. How is there other ways that these special districts get funding?
Do you want to speak to that with all your finance knowledge?
Oh, yeah. Well, it does vary a lot. In our case, we have a tax base which is not sufficient to provide the operations that are needed to serve all of the people of Kaiser that we're formed to serve. So we have the operating levy, which is also a property tax. But for ambulance services, we do bill the ambulance companies. However, the payments we receive only cover about half the cost of providing the service. So that's why the property taxes are important, because they really are needed in order to do that. I mean, this is probably true of every fire district that provides ambulance service in the country, where they're not paid the full amount that it costs them to provide the service. I do know that other districts have fees, particularly like sewer or water, where that's all they receive is the fees. They may not have any tax base. Are there others, Frank, in terms of sources of funds that you can think of offhand?
Yeah, there's and the grant funding is often very limited to special districts because most of the grant funding, like community development block grants and some of these big federal sources, they go to cities and counties only. And so special districts have to kind of look for the crumbs often from other types of districts because we don't have population data with the Federal Bureau of Census, and that's usually how those grant funds are distributed. So there are districts out there that literally survive on donations and bake sales. I mean, there's some fire districts, believe it or not, that have no tax base. There's park and rec districts I know of that have maybe a $5,000 property taxes a year, but they survive on charging for classes and maybe park and rec, baseball, or what other types of things that they generate money from. But it really is all over the map. But property taxes for the larger types of districts that aren't utilities is probably the most significant.
So I think you can see where this is important, that volunteers, these special service districts could not make it financially without the volunteers, and a very good reason for having people in our public step up and be on these various boards. You've talked a little bit about how they're created. I think there's sometimes some confusion between school boards, and I almost personally was wondering, where does the Soil and Water Conservation District fit into this? Are they a special district, or are they something separate? Because those are the two we always hear about, it seems like. Fire too. We hear about fire.
Soil and water conservation districts are actually very interesting because I believe there are soil and water conservation districts in every county in this country, and they were basically came into existence after the Dust Bowl. When there was a huge crisis in the Midwest of the whole country dried up and blew away, or the middle of the country. And so the government, U.S. Department of Agriculture, decided on this idea of soil and water conservation districts, and then each state essentially passed authorization to create the districts. So they are independent districts. They do have elected boards. They do have support, and they're kind of under the State Department of Agriculture, but they don't, they have reporting to the State Department of Agriculture, but they are actually separate entities. And they're also very interesting because they were initially formed for one purpose, and that was, as I mentioned, to conserve soil because of the Dust Bowl. But now they're involved in all kinds of activities, especially here in Oregon with a lot of our environmental regulations. They do stream restoration, they do habitat restoration, they survive a great deal on grants themselves because there are specific grant funds available for salmon restoration, et cetera. And then some of them do have a tax, property tax. Most of them don't. Some are fortunate enough that they can go to the voters and try to get that tax in place. But it is actually a very interesting type of entity to be involved with. And that's one, I think you probably mentioned that, because I know when I get my ballot, sometimes there'll be, one person on the ballot and three vacancies. And that's a big problem we have with special districts, is that our greatest generation, these folks and older, they were kind of the backbone of volunteerism in this country, and younger people just aren't volunteering as much, and that's why it's just really important that people try to step up and and get outside their comfort zone and see how they can get involved in their communities, and this is a great way to do it.
I agree. And that's our message for today, is that we want you to feel comfortable and that you too have a role in these special service districts that so much touch our daily lives. And we have experts that we can turn to ask questions. The website, the SDA website, has a short video that you can see as well. And you can turn to the volunteers in your community, such as Betty and John, and find out more about these. Also, please check out the public meeting notices and attend one and see what that's all about. So we are pleased that you are with us today. Everyone, all the people in our communities, there is a meaningful purpose for your service in one of these special districts, the many numbers that you've heard about. There's a need for you to vote in these special elections and to be a part of local decisions. Please visit the Special Service Districts of Oregon website, as I mentioned before, and you can also find fact sheets there that describe some of the various districts and find out, as you see on your ballot, which ones you may feel more comfortable and more suited for. Thank you to our guests today for their time, their service, and all of the volunteer hours that they contribute to our communities. Thank you to Capital Community Media for their expert technical production, and to you, the public, for watching this program in order to become an informed voter and certainly an active participation in our communities. Thank you.